In our headlines on this Friday, September 19th, here in South Korea, President Lee Jae-myung is poised to partake in the 80th United Nations General Assembly in New York next week and to preside over United Nations Security Council open debate on artificial intelligence and global peace. Meanwhile, Trade Minister Yoh Han-gu says the trade talks with the U.S. this time around were centered on explaining to Washington why Seoul cannot accept terms similar to those of the investment package that the Trump administration finalized with Tokyo. And the Lee Jae-myung administration is seeking to restore an inter-Korean military pact that was signed 7 years ago under the former Moon Jae-in administration and scrapped under the former Yoon Suk-yeol administration. We start with a briefing by the nation's top security advisor about President Lee Jae-myung's agenda in New York next week as he prepares to join his global counterparts at the 80th UN General Assembly. Arirang's Song Yu-jin starts us off.
Less than a month after his trip to Washington, President Lee Jae-myung is heading back to the United States next week, this time to New York. There, he will make his debut at the United Nations at the UN General Assembly's High-Level Week. National Security Advisor Wi Sung-rak briefed reporters on the president's 5-day trip on Friday.
Through this visit, we aim to highlight South Korea's contributions to the international community, strengthen bilateral ties with key countries, and boost international confidence in our economy.
Upon his arrival on Monday, President Lee will meet with Larry Fink, CEO of BlackRock and co-chair of the World Economic Forum, to discuss artificial intelligence and energy transition. He will also sit down with U.S. lawmakers calling for Congress to play a more active role in advancing South Korea-U.S. relations. The spotlight will fall on Tuesday and Wednesday. On Tuesday, Lee will address the UN General Assembly in front of some 190 heads of state and government.
Through this address, President Lee will declare South Korea's restoration of democracy, outline his administration's vision for the Korean Peninsula, and share how we can contribute to global peace and prosperity.
He's also set to hold bilaterals with UN Secretary-General Antonio Guterres, as well as the leaders of France, Italy, and Poland. However, Wi said a summit with U.S. President Donald Trump is not planned, given their recent face-to-face last month. Then on Wednesday, President Lee will chair an open debate at the UN Security Council on maintaining international peace and security through artificial intelligence. This will mark the first time a South Korean president chairs such a session, made possible by Korea's rotating presidency of the 15-member body this month. Finally, on Thursday morning, Lee will host the South Korea Investment Summit in Manhattan, where he will encourage greater investment in South Korea to heavyweight financiers and business leaders. The UN General Assembly's High-Level Week is widely seen as the world's biggest stage for multilateral diplomacy. Attention will be on what message President Lee delivers and what diplomatic and economic gains he'll achieve from his New York trip. Song Yu-jin, Arirang News.
The station you're watching, Arirang TV, hosted a special Korea Day event in New York ahead of President Lee Jae-myung's attendance at the UN General Assembly. The event took place on Wednesday local time at Citi Field during a Major League Baseball game between the New York Mets and the San Diego Padres. Promotional videos of popular Korean travel destinations and its heritage were shared on the stadium's large screens to offer the audience there a visual treat of K-culture. The head of South Korea's latest trade delegation to the U.S. says the talks this time around were centered on explaining to Washington why Seoul cannot accept terms similar to those of the investment package that the Trump administration finalized with Tokyo. Our Moon Hae-ryun has more.
Minister for Trade Yoh Han-gu is back in Seoul after high-stakes talks in Washington that could reshape tariffs, investment, and even visa rules between South Korea and the United States. Speaking to reporters at Incheon Airport on Friday, he said that the main objective of the trip was to highlight key differences between Korea and Japan in terms of U.S. negotiations.
We are presenting various objective data and analysis to make clear that Japan and Korea are different, and we are doing our best to persuade the U.S. side.
Yeo's visit, which began on Monday, comes after follow-up negotiations stalled despite a major trade deal reached back in July. Under that deal, Seoul agreed to invest $350 billion in the U.S., while both sides pledged to lower tariffs on autos from 25% to 15%. But the deal has yet to be implemented. Just last week, U.S. Commerce Secretary Lutnick warned that Korea must accept the agreement or pay tariffs, signaling Washington's growing impatience. Japan, which sealed its deal earlier, committed to a larger $550 billion investment and signed a memorandum that heavily favored the U.S. in profit sharing. In exchange, Japan's auto tariffs were lowered to 15% and implemented earlier this week. Yeo emphasized the urgency of finding a quick solution.
We fully recognize the seriousness of the situation, and we are making every effort to resolve the issue as quickly as possible.
Beyond trade, Yeo pressed the U.S. to resolve a visa dispute after immigration authorities detained Korean workers at a Hyundai LG battery plant in Georgia. He wrapped up his remarks by reaffirming Seoul's stance that national interest remains the government's top priority. Moon Hae-ryun, Arirang News.
Hyundai Motor Company has voiced hopes for a prompt deal between Seoul and Washington to lower U.S. tariffs on Korean-made automobiles and their parts to 15% from the current 25%. Our correspondent Moon Ji-young has details.
Hyundai Motor Company President Jose Munoz says he hopes South Korea and the United States can quickly reach a follow-up trade agreement to lower U.S. tariff on Korean-made vehicles. He made the remarks at the 2025 CEO Investor Day in New York on Thursday local time, where he unveiled the company's mid- to long-term strategy. He noted that the company's financial guidance was based on the 25% tariff rate, but said a reduction to 15% would bring results close enough to maintain the company's goals. This comes as Hyundai has already adjusted its operating profit margin target downwards by 1 percentage point to 6 to 7%, a move significantly impacted by the 25% tariff, unlike the 15% applied to Japanese competitors.
We all hope that both governments will be able to achieve an agreement that would pose a strong performance of the company, even if on the 15%.
In response to these tariff hurdles and to solidify its presence in the U.S. market, the automaker has ramped up its investment to approximately $11 billion for the 2025 to 2028 period. The move is aimed at expanding U.S. production capacity and establishing a robotic ecosystem. Furthermore, with the termination of tax credits under the IRA dampening EV market prospects, Hyundai has pivoted its mid- to long-term strategy. EV sales targets have been replaced with a focus on eco-friendly vehicles, including hybrids. The company also plans to launch its first mid-size pickup truck before 2030 in North America, targeting one of the largest segments in the industry. On the recent detention and release of more than 300 South Korean workers at its battery plant construction site in Georgia, Munoz clarified that the workers were involved in the final testing of advanced battery production technology. He also expressed hope for solutions on short-term technical work visas.
We hope the U.S. and Korea can work on mutually beneficial solutions for short-term business travel, especially for specialized technical expertise.
This year marks Hyundai Motor's first overseas unveiling of its mid- to long-term strategy and financial plans, interpreted as emphasizing a nimble response to complex global auto market crises, including in the U.S. Moon Ji-young, Arirang News.
In other news, U.S. President Donald Trump has voiced disappointment over his Russian counterpart's aggression against Ukraine. Our Lee Seung-jae covers his remarks and more.
U.S. President Donald Trump says Russian President Vladimir Putin has really let him down, citing stalled peace efforts as Russia's war in Ukraine drags on. Speaking to reporters on Thursday, Trump said he once thought the conflict would be the easiest to resolve because of his personal relationship with Putin.
The one that I thought would be easiest would be because of my relationship with President Putin, but he's let me down. He's really let me down. It was going to be Russia and Ukraine, but we'll see how that turns out.
He admitted that it has become his biggest disappointment, adding that he still hopes for some good news soon. Over in Moscow, President Putin announced that more than 700,000 Russian troops are now deployed in Ukraine's combat zones, and also spoke of job quotas for soldiers with government bodies.
There are more than 700,000 now on the front line, so we should choose among them. But we should choose those who are motivated and are prone to this kind of work.
Putin said while not all servicemen will see themselves as future civil servants, the Russian leader backed the idea of granting veterans additional privileges once they return home. He also stressed that achieving victory in Ukraine remains Russia's key task and highlighted demographic challenges as the next priority for his government, signaling that the war effort and domestic stability remain closely linked in his agenda. The remarks underscore two very different perspectives. President Trump voicing frustration over the lack of progress toward peace, and President Putin doubling down on a long-term campaign that continues to reshape both Ukraine and Russia's internal policies. 이 승재, Arirang News.
President Lee Jae-myung says his government will do what it should step by step to restore the spirit of the September 19 Inter-Korean Military Agreement. 7 years ago today, the two Koreas penned the military pact to end hostilities near their border. Taking to social media, the president emphasized that peace is the foundation of democracy and economic prosperity. While acknowledging the challenge of rebuilding trust, he nonetheless pledged to proceed with patience. He also reaffirmed that Seoul has no intention of pursuing unification by absorption. Indeed, the Lee Jae-myung administration is seeking to restore the Inter-Korean Military Pact that was signed 7 years ago under the former Moon Jae-in administration and scrapped under the former Yoon Suk-yeol administration. Our Oh Soo-young touches upon the task ahead.
Signed in 2018, the September 19th Inter-Korean Military Pact aimed to lower tensions along one of the world's most heavily armed borders, the Inter-Korean Military Demarcation Line. Amid dialogue between South and North Korea, then-President Moon Jae-in and North Korean leader Kim Jong-un agreed to cease hostilities across land, air and sea, moving quickly to remove frontline guard posts and work towards the demilitarization of the inter-Korean border. They also banned artillery drills and large-scale field exercises near the border and created buffer zones at sea, prohibiting live fire training and naval maneuvers. In the air, the pact established no-fly zones to stop reconnaissance flights and live fire exercises. The two Koreas further agreed to work on the joint recovery of war remains and the shared use of the Hangang River estuary. However, after the US-North Korea summit in Hanoi broke down in February 2019, Pyongyang resumed missile launches and later that year a coastal artillery drill in the West Sea, violating the Inter-Korean Pact. Tensions further rose in 2022 when 5 North Korean drones entered the South's airspace, breaking the agreement's ban on hostile aerial acts. And the North in 2023 launched a military reconnaissance satellite, violating UN Security Council resolutions. This prompted Seoul to partially suspend the no-fly zones and decide on resuming surveillance flights along the border. The next day, North Korea declared it would terminate the agreement. After the regime flew a series of trash-carrying balloons to the south, Seoul also declared an end to the agreement in June last year. While North Korea has continued to seek a nuclear state status and develop its weapons of mass destruction, South Korea's new government this year is seeking to build trust and diplomacy with Pyongyang. After a series of dovish gestures since its inauguration, President Lee Jae-myung last month ordered ministries to work towards restoring the September military agreement proactively in stages.
The essence of the pact is not so much removing the security risk, but it's the most basic safety apparatus to prevent accidental clashes or war from breaking out. So it doesn't necessarily resolve the situation, but without it, the situation is much more dangerous.
While proponents deem it an essential confidence-building and risk reduction measure, others have long voiced concerns that given the North's track record of literally blowing up deals, South Korea would only be letting its guard down. In any case, North Korea for now seems disinterested in rapprochement, particularly as it's benefiting from aiding Russia's war in Ukraine.
If the war ends quickly, North Korea-U.S. dialogue will draw closer, and the possibility of inter-Korean dialogue cannot be ruled out. However, if the negotiations to end the Ukraine war stretch on, North Korea will maintain its stance of treating the South and the U.S. as hostile states, applying pressure on the South.
While inter-Korean relations remain elusive, the fate of the dormant agreement also remains uncertain. But what's clear is that conditions on the Korean peninsula and its surrounding geopolitical environment have changed vastly over the last 7 years, making terms for military restraint that much harder to achieve and perhaps all the more necessary. Oh Soo-young, Arirang News.
Meanwhile, President Lee Jae-myung has vowed to expand opportunities for young people, linking the absence of opportunity to the presence of strife. To take a listen.
이 모든 문제의 원천은 기회의 부족이고, 기회의 부족은 저성장으로부터 오는 것이고, 성장 잠재력이 떨어지니까 현실 성장률이 떨어지고, 성장률이 떨어지니까 기회 총량이 줄어들고, 그러니까 더 좌절해서 결혼 안 하고 아이 낳지 않고 계속 악순환이 되고 있습니다. 이 악순환을 이제 전환을 해야죠.
Speaking at a town hall meeting with young adults here in Seoul on this Friday, he made note of the excessive competition and gender conflict among young job seekers in the labor market. The meeting today comes ahead of Youth Day tomorrow, that is September 20th, freshly designated by the top office to promote the interests of young adults. E-commerce giant Amazon and Korean cosmetics companies are partnering to promote K-beauty on the global stage. Our business correspondent Park Jun-an covers this collaboration.
With the theme K-beauty glowing up the world, South Korea's key players in the cosmetics industry gathered in Seoul alongside officials from Amazon Global Selling. The event highlighted the success of Korean beauty products and the company's long-term vision using Amazon's global commerce platform.
K-beauty is no longer just about effectiveness and price. It is now positioning itself as a complete experience for global consumers. Our goal is very clear. We want to introduce more K-beauty brands to customers worldwide and highlight the unique competitive edge K-beauty brings to the global market.
Korean cosmetics exports have seen a dramatic surge over the past 12 years. From 2012 to 2024, South Korea's cosmetics exports surged by over 850%, showing a strong annual year-on-year growth trend. Vice Chairman Yoon Sang-yeon of Kolmar Holdings, a leading cosmetics manufacturer in South Korea, said companies must create blockbuster products that deliver strong sales and symbolize success.
To achieve success, I would like to emphasize that one must relentlessly improve their products and continuously evolve by incorporating customer feedback. You must build the product's competitiveness based on understanding consumers' needs, and then leverage that competitiveness to grow it into a blockbuster product.
A health and beauty general manager at Amazon US stores says the key to success lies in connecting customers with the brand, enabling them to actively engage while shopping.
K-beauty is our fastest growing beauty segment. I'm proudly saying it's growing faster than any other business segment at Amazon today. The growth is not only because we have fantastic brands, your brands, but it's because also we have incredible customer engagement.
The CEO and founder of APR Corporation, which developed the globally successful Medicube Booster Pro, defined irreversible experience and fierce competition as the solutions for success.
Meeting customers' needs is customer success. That mindset drove us to improve our products, which customers clearly appreciate.
Leveraging Amazon's global e-commerce capabilities and South Korea's expertise in beauty product development, the Korean cosmetics industry is poised for boundless growth, giving it an even stronger competitive edge. Park Jun-an, Arirang News.
Up next, we take you to an expo currently taking place at a county in the center of the country that celebrates traditional music, including Korea's K-gugak, which my colleague Park Hyo-bin is quick to point out was around long before K-pop. Do take a listen.
Under the cool autumn breeze, Korea's lively rhythms fill the air. Performers play traditional Korean instruments such as 꽹과리 and 장구 to the beat of 풍물, lifting the spirit of the crowd. The World Traditional Music and Arts Expo has opened in Yeongdong-gun County, Chungcheongbuk-do Province, known as the home of Korea's traditional music. It's also known as the Yeongdong World K-gugak Expo, with K-gugak meaning traditional Korean music.
There are 33 of us here today for the Expo. It's bigger than I expected, and even at the entrance, we were saying how well it's set up. We'll look around some more. I've always loved traditional Korean music.
I really loved it. The atmosphere was so lively, and I'll definitely come back if they hold it again.
It isn't only Korean music that draws attention. A variety of sights, dances, and stage acts paired with traditional sounds captivate visitors. One of them is Bonanori, similar to a plate-spinning show that's part of the UNESCO-listed Intangible Cultural Heritage, Namsadangnori. The basic step known as ipchum, which underlies every movement in Korean dance, highlights the beauty of traditional performance. Alongside these traditional acts, there's also a fusion K-gugak that combines Korean heritage with modern music, with more than 200 performances and busking sessions in total. The expo isn't just about Korean sounds. Musicians from 30 countries, including China, Russia, and the Czech Republic, are sharing their instruments and performances, creating a true cross-cultural stage. The organizing committee says it hopes this exchange will broaden appreciation for world traditions and help K-gugak reach a wider global audience.
The Expo is not only Korea's first, but also the first of its kind worldwide. Here, you can experience the past, present, and future of Korean traditional music and enjoy outstanding dance and music from 30 invited countries, all in one place.
The expo shows that tradition, when shared, can become a language the whole world understands. The Yeongdong World K-gugak Expo runs until October 11th, bringing Korea and the world together through music. Park Hyo-bin, Arirang News.
This is The World Now, bringing you the latest stories from around the globe. U.S. President Donald Trump has publicly praised the indefinite suspension of Jimmy Kimmel Live by ABC, following remarks Kimmel made about Charlie Kirk's death. Trump also said some TV networks should have their licenses taken away. ABC, owned by Disney, announced on Wednesday evening that Jimmy Kimmel Live will be suspended indefinitely after the Federal Communications Commission threatened action over Kimmel's September 15th monologue. In that monologue, Kimmel had condemned reactions by some conservatives to the assassination of Charlie Kirk, suggesting they were trying to score political points. President Trump reacted on his social media on Thursday, celebrating the suspension and calling Kimmel talentless. He also said the show had bad ratings, while urging other late-night hosts who criticized him to face similar repercussions. Meanwhile, the chairman of the FCC said broadcasters will be held accountable to the public interest. Mass protests erupted across France as hundreds of thousands of workers, union members, and citizens mobilized to reject the government's proposed budget cuts. Union leaders estimated that over 1 million people took part, while the Interior Ministry estimated that there were around 500,000 protesters and that 80,000 police officers were deployed. The protests are against an austerity plan outlined by former Prime Minister François Bayrou, which includes cuts in public spending, possible elimination of holidays, pension adjustments, and trimming benefits. Thursday's strikes follow the Block Everything anti-government protests that took place earlier and come a week after the appointment of new Prime Minister Sébastien Lecornu. A United Nations Security Council resolution that demanded an immediate, permanent ceasefire in Gaza, the release of all hostages, and access to humanitarian aid deliveries was vetoed by the United States on Thursday. 14 non-U.S. members were in favor of the resolution drafted by 10 non-permanent members, but it was blocked by the U.S. veto, the sixth time Washington has used the measure in the nearly two-year war. The U.S. justified its veto by saying the resolution failed to condemn Hamas sufficiently and did not explicitly recognize Israel's right to self-defense. London Fashion Week kicked off on Thursday and will run through September 22nd. There are 50 catwalk shows, 19 presentations, over 60 side events, and more than 150 designers participating. The British Fashion Council has taken steps to improve designer access, waiving participation fees for official schedule shows, and increasing support, particularly for emerging designers. Early highlights include the runway debut of Maximilian Rayner, who is known for using sustainable materials, such as fabric scraps. Choi Ji-hee, Arirang News.
Autumn rain has been falling across the country today. There will be heavy rain between tonight and early tomorrow morning. In particular, strong and heavy rain of 30 to 50 millimeters per hour will fall in Chungcheongnam-do province and the western parts of Jeollabuk-do province. Rain will mostly stop tomorrow morning. With rain falling, the temperatures stayed cool even in the middle of the day. Today's daytime temperature in Seoul only rose to 21 degrees Celsius and will rise to 24 degrees tomorrow, lower than the average temperature for this time of year. Tomorrow morning will start cool at 18 degrees in Seoul, 16 degrees in Chuncheon. Daily highs will move up to 26 degrees in Daejeon, Gwangju, and Gyeongju, 28 degrees in Jeju. It will rain all over the country again next Wednesday. That's all for Korea. Here are the weather conditions around the world.
Those are the headlines at this hour here in South Korea. Coming up right after this break is our daily panel session. Do stay with us and thank you for now.